Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boys from For Those With Good Taste. I'm Matt. That's Lenny. And thanks for joining us for today's show. So, Lenny.
What up?
Some crazy shit went down this weekend.
It was a little off the wall.
We saw some craziness spread out across pretty much two different worlds, right?
But same, but different.
Same, but different. Okay.
Yeah.
So, let's start off with UFC Fight Night. Alistair Overeem versus Augusto Sakai.
Would it be another week with us if we didn't start out with a UFC event? Am I right?
I feel like let's set the tempo. Let's be consistent.
Yep.
Right?
People know what they're getting here.
We owe it to ourselves.
We're going to give you 20 hot minutes off the bat with UFC.
So, I lost this week.
Dude, I don't know if you noticed, and I don't know if the people at home have noticed, but I came in here, I let my hair down.
I was like, I gotta let the people know.
Dude, I let the flow free. I'm just out here. I'm living my best life, Matt. I'm glowing. I've been told I've been glowing since last night.
Well, I'll tell you what. I was living my worst life between rounds 3 and rounds 4.
Dude, I felt your pain through the text messages, dude.
So, first of all, shout out to my man Augusto Sakai, because I did not know it was possible to have a beer gut with a 6-pack at the end of it.
Dude, no, that's like life goals. I might be glowing actually because I found out that's possible.
Are we calling that the fat pack at this point?
If that's what I can carry around, dude, I'm liking it.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
There is a chance.
So Augusto Sakai starts this fight and makes me feel really confident in the fact that I chose him going into this fight. But somewhere along the line, Alistair Overeem's experience, his somewhat 50 fights in just MMA, another 60 in kickboxing.
The man's gone through it all.
He came in to do some work. And they call him the Demolition Man for a reason. He came in and demolished Augusto Sakai.
I found it really interesting, actually, because there was those points in the fight where you expect Overeem to get knocked out were prevalent in almost every single round, honestly. Like, Augusto Sakai looked really good. And it's a bummer how it ends, but we'll get there because I don't think it finishes well for him. But he looked really good throughout most of this fight. But then you get to this point where you're figuring out that all Overeem's really been doing is absorbing strikes on his guard the whole entire time. He's backing up to the cage, and it's almost like he knows, in the past, I've tried to swing back here, and if my chin gets touched once, I'm going to go down. But this is a young kid who's never gone 5, and I've gone 5 a lot in my career. Like you said, I've had 100 plus fights. Like,
in combat.
I know how to pace myself through this. And they did talk about pace a lot on the commentary. I don't know if you had caught that. Like, they were talking about that a lot and saying how it favored Sakai. But he's going into these huge bursts where he's ripping off like 15 punch combinations.
He looked like me in the UFC video game.
Yeah.
Where one of them lands and then the other 7, who knows what's going on with them.
Bear with us for a moment. We'll be right back.
We're going to have to cut. Can't move the dog. Come on, Bailey.
Keep going. No.
Come on.
No, come here.
Like pulling teeth, baby girl. What's up with you? Okay, let's get it out of your system now.
And we are back. Sorry for the delay, everybody, but where were we?
Talking about pace.
Yes.
And the difference in Alistair Overeem's experience that really played a factor here.
Ring generalship is what I saw. Sure. As a guy that he knows his strengths and he knows his weaknesses at this point in his career, and he came out there and he was just able to weather the storm at all times and just kind of live in this world where he's getting all these strikes thrown, but they're all just bouncing off of his arms, and he's in there in the chaos. And around the 3rd round, you're like, dude, when are you going to turn it on, though? It was kind of a question, right?
Yeah, so before, I want to say it might have even been the 2nd round, he got a takedown, and we saw the vast differences between that fight happening on the feet and that fight happening on the ground. And Alistair Overeem's experience played a huge factor in that. But then we go into round 3, and to your point, we're kind of waiting, like, hey, what are you doing here?
So I have a dog. Let me talk to the people at home. I have a dog, and she's the light of my life. Love this girl. But currently, and maybe the camera's picking it up, I don't even know, is just licking the whole side of my leg, and it's impossible to focus.
But you're rolling with the punches.
I'm trying my best. I'm Alistair Overeem the fuck out of this
So
one.
let's talk about that 3rd round, because I feel like that 3rd round was extremely crucial. Alistair Overeem is up against the cage, and Augusto Sakai comes in with a series of clinch strikes up against the cage, catches him with a couple of lunging knees, and lands probably one of the most beautiful elbows I've seen in combat sports in quite some time. Lands it completely flush on Overeem's forehead, and we start seeing some blood. And then I feel like that possibly flips a switch because Overeem starts seeing the blood and starts really emphasizing and imposing his game on Augusto Sakai.
Yeah, I thought the first 2 rounds it was really close in terms of the striking, and most of it was playing out in the clinch. And then I thought in the long run, with my far less knowledge on Sakai, I knew with Overeem this was going to be a strength for him, or a place where at least he knew how to control the fight.
Sure. And
he was landing some really nice knees through those first couple rounds, and I almost thought the judging was a little funny. And when I was seeing how they do a good job at the UFC of like integrating Twitter with everything, so you're getting the comments during the fight. We were able to see what
the betting lines look like in the middle of the fight.
So you're seeing like everybody online's like it's 10-9 Sakai, and then it's 20-18 Sakai, and I was kind of in my head like I could see it going both ways for those first 2 rounds. It was fairly even, but then to your point, Overeem sees that he has, like, what we all probably knew was that he was going to have a far superior grappling game. So he ends up just taking him down, and progressively it gets worse and worse for Sakai. He's bringing him to deep water.
I can remember vividly a series of hammer fists, and it's the series not one after the other.
It's the end of the second round, maybe, or the third round?
It's the end of the third round.
End of the third, yeah.
And he lands 3. And there's a couple of seconds in between them, but there's absolutely no adjustment. And after he lands those hammer fists, you start seeing him work elbows and strikes to the body on the ground.
Yeah.
And people on Twitter were picking up on that. They're saying that body work is going to start playing a factor in these later rounds. And Alistair Overeem did not disappoint, because once he got that fight down to the ground again, we got to see a plethora of different strikes from him.
They said he was landing at like a 70% clip, I believe, through most of that fight. And he wasn't throwing a ton of strikes. Yeah. But then when he finally does throw them, you think about like the stuff that he was throwing on the ground where he did most of his damage, he spent it in the right spot. Right. And that's a veteran fighter. Like you could just, that fight was experience to a T. And I texted you after the fight and said, like, that's about how I saw it going.
Yeah.
And I just kind of had figured if he was going to lose, and this is, I'm sure, what you were thinking, if he's going to lose in the pocket in those exchanges on the fence, he would have traditionally gotten caught somewhere in there. And I was like holding my breath at points because I assumed it was coming. There was definitely those moments where you just assumed he was done.
When that elbow landed, I felt like that was the start of something serious. I thought Sakai was going to start, but I almost thought he was going to start being able to put it together and really put the pressure on Overeem. But then you start seeing his gas tank start withering.
Yeah.
And Overeem starts landing some serious strikes in the stand-up game and is able to go down and take it to the ground at will.
Yeah. It was impressive. And those takedowns in the 4th round and into the 5th round when he finishes the fight, even like Daniel Cormier was blown away by these.
Yeah, and, shame on me, for completely dismissing Overeem. But to your point, we've seen him dominate a fight with his experience and get caught in the later rounds, get his lip split open by Curtis Blades. Things like that come to mind, and I saw that happening. But in typical Overeem fashion, his experience plays a major factor, and at 40 years old, he's still clamoring for a title shot.
Yeah, so he mentioned a couple names after the fight. He mentioned both Derek Lewis, who seemed to be talking that ish online, like he is known to do.
Derek Lewis wants to have smoke.
Or he said he'd fight Rosenstrike again, which I think both of those fights make a lot of sense. Do you have a preference? I don't know if I do.
The Rosenstrike fight for me is interesting.
He was winning it.
But it's not something I'm clamoring to see.
Because if that Overeem fights him, though, I guess he fought him pretty much the same.
It was a similar...
Overeem was winning it, though.
If Rosenstrike is going to land that strike in either fight, it's going to end the same way.
Yeah.
Right? So I think the more appealing fight is the Derek Lewis fight because it gives some appeal. I mean, Derek Lewis has fought for a title. He's currently on a decent winning streak, and he's got the notoriety. He has the name. I don't see that fight going the distance.
We said that about the Ngannou fight, and hopefully that's like I'd have to imagine.
Don't bring that up.
If Overeem was to win,
it would go to the distance.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, I could see that. I don't see Derek Lewis getting knocked out. So I guess for me, if I see Overeem and Derek Lewis fighting, if that's a 3-round fight, I may go with Derek Lewis just for the pressure.
3-round fight, I'm going to take Lewis. 5-round fight, I'm going to lean more towards it having a chance of looking similar to last night.
Sure.
or also being similar to, I don't know, I could see him tapping him out. Like, how quickly did Daniel Cormier finish Derek Lewis? Was it second or third round?
So that went on for a little bit. I want to say that was in the third round.
I just feel like with Derek Lewis, like, he could eventually get a submission just because Lewis is so tired, and Overeem's top game has proven to be so dynamic and dominant. Out of this world. Yeah, it's really good. Really good.
It makes you wonder why we haven't really seen him take some of those more dangerous guys down.
He can't get there, I think. And I think last night, what I was thinking a lot about was his cardio seemed to be such a thing to him. And I thought he was going to lose, truthfully, when it was getting to about the third round.
Sure.
I felt like he was going to lose the fight because he was potentially down 2-0. Maybe it was 1-1. But his gas tank, even though he wasn't doing a ton, he didn't look like he had a ton of cardio at that point.
Can I tell you, I feel like every Overeem fight we've had there's either a conversation from the commentators or there's a mention of him monitoring his gas tank, and I feel like that's been going on for about 3 or 4 years now.
He has to, though, because of the size that he has been, and this was what I was thinking about, was like he has been the horse meat shit, right? He's been like this.
Those highlights have been all over the place.
Yeah.
Building up until this fight, you see the video of Ariane Celeste's reaction to him coming up in the Brock Lesnar fight as Overeem. Yeah. But to your point, again, he was so big.
He's come down. He's a little smaller now.
He's got a gut. He's got a little bit of a gut going. He's not as fit. But to my point earlier is when does this just become part of the game plan where we can kind of stop talking about it? Because I don't really see a change in his approach from his last 3 fights to this last fight. Maybe he's a little bit more reserved.
He was tired though, and they mentioned. I think DC was like once he got that takedown in the third, all of a sudden you saw the body language kind of perk up, and he was like, "Oh, I was right." Like. This kid has not gone through it yet, and I knew I could get him to the ground, and I knew once I did this, I was going to be fine. Now I'm fine. Yeah. And when you're dropping to your ass and pulling a guy on top of you to get the takedown, you don't really have that much respect for. They're like, okay, you can stop a single and a double leg, but now, like, I've been in wrestling class for double the time that you've been living. Like he could do it all.
And that's where the experience plays a huge factor. Where I don't really think, from an experience point, he's not really matched in the heavyweight division. With DC leaving...
DC doesn't even have the MMA experience when you really get down to it. He's only been in for 10 years.
Yeah,
in heavyweight...
He has a different pedigree,
You're talking like Fabricio Verdum, maybe.
Yeah, those guys. And I think the most interesting fight for Overeem is a shot at the title. I think it'd be extremely interesting to see him fight Stipe.
He's third on the pecking list, though, so he's got to fight another time.
But what I was going to say is there's not really... You asked me if I was interested in seeing Rosenstruck or I was interested in seeing Derek Lewis. If I had to pick between the two, I'd want him to fight Derek Lewis because I feel like it'd be a little bit more interesting. But that's not the fight that gets me excited for Alistair Overeem. I'm kind of done with him fighting, to continue to prove. He's always going to be that guy who's 1 or 2 fights away from a title shot. I think you brought this up a couple weeks ago.
I'd like to see him fight one more time. I would like to see him fight once at least before. If he wins his next fight, put him in there with Stipe because that gives some time for those other people to free up a little bit too. He's not going to fight Jones. I think they're friends. I don't think that would happen.
That kept coming up in the commentator from the
Overeem would do it actually because he'll just fight anybody. I think.
So you say that they're from the same camp. Overeem's been through.
He's not there anymore.
Well, okay. But Overeem's been through
a million. Well, and that's why I think he would do it.
Yeah, and if the money's right, I couldn't see him saying no.
But him and John just are both kind of those assholes that are really high on themselves. So I think they really both like each other.
Probably. Probably.
On the flip side here, Sakai, I feel bad for him because this is the downside to booking the way that they book. They were hoping, in a way, maybe to see if Sakai launches his name. And the downside to that is when you book these guys against guys that are really experienced, is that you can see somebody essentially quit. He got to the 5th round, and I don't blame him. I don't mean that as a slight because I would quit too.
After 3 hammer fists from Alistair Overeem?
No, sure. Those were three hammer fists 2 rounds ago. Now you dropped elbows all over me for a whole other round after those 3 hammer fists.
Don't sign me up.
Like, it sounds awful. So I don't mean that as a slight at all, but I do just think the end of that fight didn't look pretty for him, and it's hard for me to see. Maybe you learn from this. I hope that's what you get out of this, is you learn from it, right? You
don't want there to be a negative connotation to his name. And towards the end of that fight, all I kept hearing was how crazy the swing was from the betting line of round 1.
Oh, dude, he was a 3 or 4 to 1 favorite.
He was a -400.
Yeah, 4 to 1 favorite going into the 3rd round, I think. Yeah.
And that's what was the constant dialogue throughout that at the end of that fight, and to your point, you see him get broken.
It's possibly 2-2 going into the fifth, too, which is nuts. Because it doesn't feel like that. But it's 2-2 maybe going into the fifth.
As someone who was more excited about Sakai winning those rounds, I wouldn't say those were 10-8 by any means. I would say that
they weren't even like it was a toss-up, if anything.
Toss-up could have gone either way, but I'd understand if Sakai was to come out on top in a
3,
decision.
4, and 5 are a different fight. Totally different fight.
That fourth round is a 10-8.
Yeah.
I think you'd have to score that at 10-8 if that's in the normal in the new rules that we're looking at.
I'd agree.
So, who do you think he fights next? Who do you think Overeem fights next? I think Sakai. He's going to get a no-name person. I think they probably build his status up a little. Walt Harris.
Sure. Yeah, maybe put Sakai in there with Walt Harris. That's actually a really good one. I was going to tell you I don't really care who they put Sakai against. But I wouldn't mind that. Walt Harris makes some sense. He's at that level, both coming off losses.
We got to support this guy.
Yeah, no, I'm with him, but you got to give me a little bit. He hurt me a little bit at the end of that fight. The flip side, I think you're going Derek Lewis with Overeem, and that's where I'd go. Okay.
So before we jump into the other craziness that happened this weekend, I want to stick to the UFC conversation a little bit, because this coming Saturday, we've got Michelle Waterson versus Angela Overkill Hill in a fight that was supposed to be headlined by Thiago Santos and Glover Teixeira. That gets scratched because of coronavirus and COVID. Michelle Waterson versus Angela Hill, both of them are coming off of losses, somewhat controversial losses in both senses. Are you excited for this fight?
No. Sorry.
That's okay. That was a close-ended question, and I got the answer I expected. Give me some reasoning behind it.
I did just remember something while you were bringing it up, though, and it was you were mentioning people getting taken off the card for Corona. This past couple of weeks have been drastically impacted by Corona.
Actually, can I correct my mistake really quickly? Shout out to Oven St. Preux.
Got on the card.
Yeah,
good for him.
Beat COVID, gets on the card, and does some serious work.
Face plants a man.
Does some
walk-off KOs.
You know what I like to say.
Yeah.
The guy was face down, ass up, walk-off KO, doesn't even have to follow out with a shot.
Yeah, it was beautiful. That was really nice, and good shout-out for him. I read a stat, though, that this was the first time... Well, it was the first time since, like, UFC 35 that they've had this little fights on a card. I want to say they only had, maybe it was 9 last night.
It was an early start time, even for the card.
So I wish I had the stats right in front of me. Ariel Helwani had posted something about it, but he had mentioned it was this, and like the last time the card had this little was the Diaz versus Diego Sanchez fight, like that long ago that they've had this little fights on a card. And to think like that's just all they have to adjust on the fly so much. And you're going into the craziest storyline this weekend is the fact that this wasn't the main event, that they were booked for a 3-round fight. Now they're booked for a 5-round fight. That's interesting to me. Cool storyline. Am I excited for the fight? No, it's going to be a banger, I'm sure. Like, these girls like to stand up and strike. I'm a Michelle Waterson fan, definitely. Angela Hill, to me, she ends up tossed into these fights a lot where I just think she's going to lose. She gets booked in a lot of these fights against people just to kind of make them look better. Kind of a jobber.
To the casual MMA fan.
And that's insulting.
No. It's not insulting if that's the consensus that you're kind of giving off from some of the fights that you're having. I think Angela Hill hasn't benefited from the fact that she was a champion at another organization. As soon as she came into this division in the UFC, they immediately pit her against people that it was going to be tough for her. Going into this fight against Michelle Waterson, a lot of people think that she won against Claudia Gadelha. Her face looked a lot better than Claudia's did. Usually that's what some people would go by. But going into this fight, she's got a little bit more to prove, because if she does win that fight, there was a lot of talk of her possibly being in line for a title shot.
And while I'm thinking about it, you could really just take that whole scenario I painted for Hill and just place that on Waterson, because she's also been in a lot of these same situations. Maybe that's where I'm not as interested in this, is because they've both been presented in a way that makes me know that there's a certain level to the skill that they have. That this is an evenly matched fight. So it's going to be exciting, and these girls are going to throw down. Like I said, they can go everywhere and fight. Maybe Michelle Waterson has proven herself on the ground a little bit more than I think Angela Hill has. I could see that being a route that we see Michelle Waterson take, is if she really wants to win this fight, control her for 5 rounds on the ground, and I think she could do that.
Well, it's so I know that you're not interested in the fight. For me, as a fight fan, only because I watched their last 2 fights. And seeing the way that, at least in the case of Michelle Waterson, I thought she won against Carla Esparza.
Mm-hmm.
The wrestling played a huge factor, but we're watching, in this case, two women who have always been the undersized fighters at this weight class, and now they're fighting someone who's going to be similar in weight.
Waterson's still going to look undersized, I think, to Hill, because Hill's lanky. She's really tall.
She's jacked.
Yeah.
She's also jacked.
Yeah.
Great body on that girl. But when I think of
this, take a look.
When I think of the skill set, I do think that they're very evenly matched. I do think that this is a little bit of a reward for Overkill Hill, in a sense, because Michelle Waterson is the big name that she's not used to getting before Claudia Gadelha. And I think if she wins this, it kind of gets rid of that Claudia Gadelha loss, where Michelle Waterson is in a tough spot, because if she loses this fight, that's 3 in a row. That's 3 against the cream of the crop. And to your point, it does set her into that gatekeeper status.
Looking at Angela Hill's record, though, the hardest thing about her opponents she's had to fight is pronouncing their names. Killed it.
That happens at 115 pounds.
Dude, these names are Loma Lukbunme.
Lukbunme.
That's a name.
Ariane Carmelozzi.
Ciphers for the last name. Ciphers. What is that one?
Hannah Ciphers is a little bit
and
easier.
So I look at the competition difference there. Esparza, Joanna, Kowalkiewicz. Dude, I got it.
Dude, don't disrespect Karolina Kowalkiewicz, dude.
I think you said it wrong.
Kowalkiewicz?
Yeah. And then like Felice Herrig, Courtney Casey, these guys are all, or these females are all like very big established names in the division.
Not big names, but
so,
no names.
On paper, I would just have to go with Michelle Waterson getting the win here. I think experience goes a long way. I think her camp goes a long way. You just know what you're going to get with her, and I trust that talent. But she does have those fights. I say you know what you're going to get with her. You do have those fights where she does come out and get a little, beat up. But
beat up, and also I think her being undersized, we see her get dominated sometimes, especially in the grappling exchanges, and I think that played a big part in the Carla Esparza fight.
Yeah.
Can I steal? Are we in the trust tree?
I mean, I've stepped into the tree a few times, dude. It's welcome.
I'm going to steal your choosing with my heart, but following my brain scenario.
I don't know if those ever work together.
They don't. I genuinely enjoy Michelle Waterson as a fighter. I love the background information on her, on wanting to be the first champion mom. There's a lot of great things that go with her storyline. If she were to lose this fight, I pretty much don't ever see her fighting for a title. And for me to accept that, at least being a fan of hers, would be difficult to accept. So my heart is going to go with Michelle Waterson. But in seeing what I've seen from Angela Hill, at least in her last fight against Claudia Gadelha, where she was not only game, she was aggressive, she was taking it to Claudia, who's always been known as a more aggressive fighter. My head believes that Angela Hill may come out on top this time. So
yeah, I could see you being right. Yeah,
I don't want to be right.
If you're right, that means I'm right. So actually, no, I could see you definitely being right.
Let's just say I want to be wrong in this scenario.
So wrong it's right?
So wrong that it feels right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm going to stick with that. So you're going Michelle Waterson.
You're going Michelle Waterson.
I'm going Michelle Waterson.
But
if Angela Hill wins, I technically still win.
I feel like you're hedging.
Of course.
Okay.
Have you paid attention to this show
at all? I feel like you're hedging a bit.
I feel like that just goes with my MO. Okay. I genuinely think it's going to be a good fight. A lot to look forward to.
I'm going to add in, because I'm interested right now and I don't have this in front of me. What I want to know what the betting odds are for this fight. I'd have to imagine Angela. Michelle Waterson's got to be the favorite on this. You want to look it up for us briefly?
Yeah, let's take a look here. So, what do you think it is?
I figure it's pretty even, but it's probably close to maybe she's like minus 180, 190. Angela Hill. Oh, Waterson's the dog. Okay. Wow. It's dead even.
It's close. That's a pick 'em.
It's a pick 'em, but yeah, I'm surprised that they do have Waterson as the dog there.
And this is to my point.
Yeah,
if you're looking at Angela Hill's last couple of fights, it gets interesting because the name value might not be there, but in the way that she won some of those fights, it's going to be interesting. I genuinely think that this is a good fight to lock yourself into. If you're a casual fan, it's free. You might as well check it out.
Yeah, it's definitely one I'd keep an eye out for. So, buddy, you got to kind of step into my world a little bit this weekend, huh?
Yeah, I'm still kind of recovering a little bit.
Yeah, this was a weird one for me. It's a bummer that this went the way. I was bummed the whole night, honestly.
Well, when I say I'm recovering, there was a lot of everything. There was a lot of good. There was a ton of bad. But overall, for the person who only catches events every now and again, and this being my first introduction to this brand.
Yeah, so we're talking about, just so everybody knows, because we jumped into it.
Got excited.
AEW had an event this weekend. I believe it was called All In.
All Out.
I think it's All In.
I think it's All Out.
That's funny.
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
I think we'll argue.
Maybe I'm right. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe we didn't watch the same event. But we both ended up watching it last night. I am a pretty consistent wrestling watcher, but I'm not actually a big AEW watcher. But this is my first time actually watching a full event. I've watched matches that were really good, things like that. But I've been a WWE guy my whole life. It's a little bit of a war right now, and I have to pick a side. But I gave them a shot, and maybe to my joy, but it didn't feel like that in the moment because I wanted it to be a good event. It was a little bit of a disaster until the end.
So while we're there, your expectations were here.
Yeah.
Where would you say the results fall?
First of all, and this is more of a geeky wrestling side of things, but a thing that the WWE has done very well during the Corona stuff and the pandemic is, with adjusting to not having fans, shorter shows feel a lot better. Because to me, the atmosphere of wrestling versus the atmosphere of MMA, it takes me out of the entire thing completely. And they have fans at AEW. I don't know if you had noticed that last night, but they do have.
I wanted to ask you: is that people who are part of the organization, or are those brand new people? Because there was quite a few people.
15% of capacity is allowed.
Okay,
so they fill the upper bowl. You buy sections of, I think, up to 4 seats, maybe.
That's what together. It was like. I saw groups of 4 people.
But you can't buy with people outside of your friend group. So in theory, they just keep you to your group, and then there's another set of 4 over here, and so on. But it's a huge arena, so 15% of fans. And I guess last night the big problem with it is the heat. They said it was about 90, above 90 with the humidity, because they do that in Jacksonville and Florida.
Oh yeah.
So it's just hot down there. And it affected everybody, it seemed. The crowd was zapped, right? Those matches, a lot of them felt very hollow, and some of them I can't blame them. Some of them just weren't good.
Yeah, some of those guys, they were working, and they their conditioning, stamina, if you will, played a huge factor, and I think that kind of led to some of the what we call them, accidents, mishaps.
The slip on the shooting star press was definitely as a result of the slippery ropes, because that guy's really good. Matt Sydal is a good wrestler, formerly Evan Bourne in the WWE. He's done that move a million times, but that was scary. Him being a vet probably saved his fucking life, because
he knew what to do.
He grabbed the ropes, and it's really the only thing that stopped his momentum.
Yeah.
But we get to later in the night. I don't think the Matt Hardy thing was not a thing of the humidity. That was just a thing of stupidity.
So can we jump on that?
Yeah,
start there.
I mean,
that's
the talking
start.
point, right? There's some good matches, but that's the talking point coming out of this.
So being the don't catch an event every single week person, being that person, I sent you the text. I was like, dude, is this a bit? What's going on here? Because they jump off of that platform, the scaffolding, whatever
Sammy
you want to call
Guevara
it.
spears Matt Hardy off of a forklift that went up, and off of this forklift, they had 2 tables set.
That was 2 tables?
There was supposed to be there was 2 tables there stacked, and basically they missed the first one, land on the second, but by missing the first one, it causes Matt Hardy's shoulders and up to his skull to hit the concrete beneath. No padding, nothing, just smacks it. And to say it was uncomfortable would be probably an understatement. The next 10 minutes that followed,
I was uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I was uncomfortable.
It took me a while to get back from that.
I was uncomfortable because it wasn't good to see it. First and foremost, you see his head bounce off of the concrete, and they replay it a couple of times. The commentary team doesn't really do anything to kind of shy away from the
Nobody knew what the fuck
happened.
to do, right? Nobody knew what to do.
And Matt is there stiff. He's there stiff. It doesn't look good. And I'm there okay, is Sammy going to go? Is he going to go along with this? Is he just going to? And he picks him up. He moves him. He starts moving him. And you see Matt kind of regain consciousness. But there's a good 3 minutes maybe. Maybe it felt longer to me.
Yeah, it felt like an eternity. Matt is he's just stumbling around, can't keep his footing, stumbling everywhere. And somehow they call the match, right? Which is the right thing to do. They put the X symbol up, and when they do that, that means somebody's hurt for real.
Yeah.
So they stop the match. Because of the stipulation, Matt Hardy, if he lost, would have to leave AEW. Was the stipulation of the match. One that they had thrown in that week. So it wasn't even a stipulation that needed to be there. And they kind of just threw it on there. So what happens is, Matt, you pan away, and you just see Sammy Guevara walking around, talking some shit, whatever he's doing.
Yeah.
And they claim that while this is happening, Matt Hardy somehow gets a health check.
Dr. Sampson.
Yeah, a lot of Dr. Sampson.
They're telling me that Dr. Sampson has to have cleared him.
He passed a concussion test. Matt,
Sir, I watched the NFL. I know what a fake concussion protocol looks like, and it's a lot longer than that.
In boxing, is it or is it not, with a boxing glove, illegal to punch somebody in the back of the head?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And because that can be significantly damaging. There's like all this important stuff
it's an MMA also.
Yeah, like you can
kick someone behind the head.
Yeah, but you can't elbow somebody
Yeah.
from above to the back of the head. Like those things can like paralyze a man.
Yeah.
And this guy landed flat on the back of his head on concrete from 15 fucking feet in the air. And they claim he passes a concussion test. And they continue the match. And Matt, they don't only continue the match.
It escalates.
They climb up another 15-foot thing and push the other guy off of it. That's insane. It's like dude, with what we know about concussions and the fact that it was able to get to this point where a guy that was already clearly, he was legless, could not move.
Lenny, he was stiff.
He climbed 15 feet in the fucking air after it.
Lenny. Rich Franklin, Nate Quarry.
Yeah.
You remember how stiff he is in that
falls
knockout?
Backwards, legs up in the air. Like
that was Matt Hardy for 3 minutes. Sammy picks him up. He goes to get a CTE check. Nothing happens. They come back out. They climb that that whatever that was.
Yeah.
And then Matt Hardy throws Sammy.
In the moment, thinking about this, how insane, because he throws him onto a pad, right? So that Sammy fall is safe. Like, that was a very safe fall. That's like padding made for them to for stunt people to fall. But so my point being, one guy, the end of your match, because that was the planned ending. They just skipped everything in the middle. They just went right to whatever the ending was, right? That was the planned ending. So your planned ending was pushing this man off of scaffolding onto a pile of padding to give me the 10 count. But you didn't think it was a crazier spot to spear the guy off of a forklift onto fucking concrete? No, that's the finish. Why? You guys did this backwards. The easy one was what you did at the end. Dude, that would have been a 10 count no matter what. In the rules of the match, he lost. No, just in the bare rules of the match.
She stopped counting.
She missed the 10 count.
She stopped counting.
You can't restart that. He was done.
When you do this, Lenny, what's Roman numeral for 10?
I think that's that. Yeah,
Sir?
That's what she was calling.
That's an automatic 10 count.
The end of the match. That's crazy.
That's an automatic 10 count. He is out cold. Hello, let's get this guy in a stretcher. Let's go make. And then you know what they had the audacity to do, Lenny? Love Jim Ross to death. Or I'm sorry, is it? Yeah, Jim Ross. JR, love JR.
It was either Tony Schiavone or JR. Yeah.
JR, after 10 minutes of what we had just witnessed, tells us that those guys are on their way to the hospital and they're fine.
Matt, he couldn't have told us enough on that broadcast that he didn't have a concussion. Bitch, he has a concussion. There's no ifs, ands, or buts.
He needs some milk because that man banged his head on concrete. I can't stress it enough. He laid down for 3 minutes without moving, and then he goes, "You know what, Sammy? You need some concussion protocol.
Yeah,
here you go." And you can say that fall is safe. I don't see that fall being safe.
It's as controlled. It's like a stuntman does that in a movie. Like, that's just the reality, right? And at the end of the day,
that's the 10 count.
Wrestling is live stuntmen in a lot of ways, right? So that's where I say I've seen a million people watching it weekly or following it for the past 25 years of my life, right? I've seen enough people take controlled falls. Jeff Hardy is swantoned off of 9 million things.
I've seen the classic TLC matches. Yeah. I've seen Shane O'Mac throw himself from Hell in a Cell, from ladders. I've seen it all. So it wasn't the first time that I've seen something like that.
It's disturbing after what we had just seen.
Being the first time that I'm channeling it as hey, I'm going to watch this from start to finish. I'm sitting back wondering, why is the UFC getting crap for dudes getting 12-6 elbowed when I literally just watched a man bang his head off the concrete?
That is an outlier, to be fair. And the reason that you don't get 12-6 elbows in MMA has nothing to do with head injuries. It has to do with cuts, I believe.
Sure.
So, like, the visual of what your face looks like after that for whatever reason.
My understanding was that the structural damage that it can do, because they watched enough of those videos.
No, yeah, that was
where those guys are breaking through concrete with their elbow. Yeah. Neither here nor there.
I think you're right to question it, and that was a black eye. Like in to fast forward a little in the event. So, when you weren't watching when Penelope Ford and Kip Sabian were on the screen,
I didn't see it.
Did you see any of the the fallout from that?
I think I put it back on as the match was ending.
So Kip Sabian and they do a backstage segment segment type thing, and the thing with the WWE this week is they have told all of their talent that they are no longer allowed to do like different social media things for revenue. So they're not allowed to do Cameo and stuff like that, like Periscope, I'm sure.
So you can't have, so Peyton Royce can't have a TikTok?
You can't use your WWE likeness to do it. So
but I guess your name is Peyton Royce at WWE.
You can't. she has to go by her real name, which she is doing that for her YouTube channel. And the big one was like Paige just changed her. Paige just changed her what is it? Twitch name, to Soraya, which is her real name, and that was a direct correlation. So during the Kip Sabian thing during the AEW show, he ends up he's like, everybody check out my Twitch channel, and holds up a thing, and then they do another thing, and it does like sponsored by AEW underneath, and it's kind of a shot at the WWE. But you're taking this shot 30 minutes after you just had this moment where you have allowed a guy to compete. And another part, and this is going backstage wrestling, which I'm sure nobody cares about except for me. They had also been upset because recently they used Jeff Hardy's drug addiction in the WWE for a storyline, and they had him fight in a bar, and they made all this big deal about like how that's not not good to the performer and this, that, and the other. But then his brother on the show that he's left to go to, he's saying is so much better than his, allows him to put, like, you could die.
His life
right?
is on
like
the line.
there's potential ramifications coming after this, and his wife is pissed. Like, she's aired them out online. She's letting him hear it. And I mean, how would your wife feel if like something like that happened to you at your workplace and they did nothing about it?
None of it looks good.
No,
none of it looks good. And I think what makes it worse is when you had some time to make it work, to make it more safe, to make it right.
Yeah,
you missed every opportunity.
This just shines a brighter light again on how the world of wrestling lives in its own little niche, and because it lives there, companies like the WWE and I guess in this instance AEW get to do things that a normal company doesn't really get to do, right? Yeah. I urge anybody who has any interest in knowing any of the dark shit behind wrestling. There's a series called Dark Side of the Ring that's out. It was a Vice TV series. It was really...
Just gonna take a note of that real quick.
It was a really good show. It just basically dives into different things that are like behind the scenes, really dark, fucked up shit that's happened in wrestling. Like Jimmy Snuka, like that guy's beloved, right? He's a fucking murderer. People don't know that. Yeah. Like he's a murderer potentially. Like never. He was charged with it towards the end of his life too. But there's a bunch of stories like that. Like a guy New Jack. Like he's a legendary, like crazy ECW guy.
We've heard dark stories in the past. I mean the Lex
Chris
Luger,
Benoit's steroids in wrestling, all of this shit. Everything. So if you have any interest in that, it's a fantastic series. I definitely think people should check it out.
Yeah,
and an event last night, and even the stuff at the WWE and the way that they're going to control their talent. And I understand that they see opportunities to maybe make money with signing agreements with TikTok. So have a WWE TikTok where all of our people do it and we make money off of that versus these guys making money on their own. Or Cameo, like we built your name and now you're making 100% of the profits separate from us. Right. There is means or things like there's contracts that were signed. So they're within their rights.
What's happening right
but it's pretty shitty to your employees who you've already been kind of shitty. You've made jump through hoops during the Corona stuff. They've never missed a week, right? And like that schedule is not. I say they've never missed a week. They'll film 2 episodes in a week and then they'd come back.
Those guys are always on the road, though. You're always doing something.
I mean, they've been putting themselves out there for your company to keep going, and the WWE has had the most profitable year they've ever had this year off of TV revenue, and the reason you were able to keep making that TV revenue is because of your employees who have showed up and wrestled every week, right? So now you're going to tell them that they can't make extra money on something like Cameo, where it's just recording a minute-long thing and talking to their fans. And there's other questions that aren't really being answered here, because like Xavier Woods has a show Up, Down, Down that's like one of the biggest YouTube channels, and it's partnered with the WWE. And so because like now you've kind of worked together with them, are they going to allow you to keep that going? Because now there's a double standard to me.
And it's very easy for them to kind of just be like, no, we're going to take back our end of that and make it so that you're not able to profit off of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're getting a little away from it. The event for me from there, it took me about an hour to get back into it. I don't know. You jumped over to the UFC for a bit in there.
Yeah, so I was jumping between events, and one thing I'd like to kind of point out is with everything crazy that we're talking about that happened, accidents, mishaps, things like that, I'd actually like to get your take on just the event in general, from start to finish. You know, we've talked a lot about some of the accidents that they may have had. What did you take away from the event, barring all that aside?
It was close to 6 hours long, which, like I was saying earlier, the WWE's pace is about 2.5 hours during these events. This went about 6 hours, and I thought the Moxley match was really good, best match of the night, easily. It was tough for me at that point to really stay engaged. I thought the last 3 matches saved the event. If those last 3 matches didn't deliver for me,
that Mimosa Mayhem, baby.
Yep, Mimosa Mayhem. Chris Jericho, still one of the best wrestlers in the world in terms of just drawing ability and popularity. And the match was creative. I thought they played with the stipulation well, and you got the moment at the end where he gets thrown into the vat of Mimosa.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
Have you seen it in slow-mo?
Yeah, it's pretty great.
It looks awesome.
And you can just tell, like, while I was watching it, I was like, Chris Jericho, it made so much sense that he did the job there, took the loss, and built another guy off of him. That's the kind of guy Jericho is. He's smart for business. But he also, I could just see getting a real kick out of taking that fall. Right? He just, like, the way he's just laying still in the Mimosa, like that was him, like, he wanted that moment.
It might have been just a tad funnier if he would have just, like, pulled the glass and was like, I'm already here. And just, like, kind of
probably did turn over at a point, sips it down. It probably didn't taste good either. In the match before that I think you missed, that was the second best match on the card to me, was FTR, formerly the Revival, versus Kenny Omega and Hangman Page.
I caught bits and pieces. That's where I was going in and out of it.
That match was really good. But that was also the match to me that suffered the most from the atmosphere, because that was a match that if it was in front of a full arena, and you can't really give them this caveat anymore because there are great matches that have happened in front of...
Yeah, you have to be able to make it work.
Yeah, at this point. And you do have the benefit of a live audience. The WWE now has the fake simulated noise, and it's like really distracting to me. It disorients me in some matches. For AEW, though, that heat took it out of the fans, and nobody was giving it like back to the performers, it felt like. So the matches almost felt soulless in a way. It felt like really good matches, good moves.
Well, with it being so long, they kind of went big in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
They're really hyped. The fans are into it. But when it's lasting that long, and again, those people witnessed exactly what we witnessed, right? It could probably take this thing out of the environment a little bit.
It's also, I thought about this after the event with how late it went. It was probably, 11:30 when it ended? Say
close to, I'd say about 11:30, close to midnight.
How much time did they cut out of that Matt Hardy match? Or maybe with following them around the arena, most of that time was still eaten up. I just thought it was nuts that match was cut short and you still went to 11:30 at that point. It seemed like kind of nuts that the timing was that long.
At least from what I was seeing from the amount of promoting that was happening around that match, I mean, that was pretty low down the ring pole, I guess you could, or very low rung on the ladder there.
Yeah,
they had a few matches after that. Can I say, as a casual fan or even a pop in and out fan, one of the things that I always look for is the technique. I think that's why I've always been a huge fan of combat sports, boxing, MMA. I'll throw in some kickboxing, some Muay Thai every now and again. But when I looked at the caliber of wrestling, there was both sides of the spectrum. I saw a lot of what I would consider to be amateurish, and I'm nobody to speak on it, obviously. I'm not a good enough fan there. But then you also got to see the level of technique that I think kind of helped me appreciate what was going on a little bit more. And at least for me watching that event, there wasn't really a point in that where I was like, man, I'm really just not enjoying watching this at all.
Yeah.
There was always some aspect of it that was very interesting to me.
It was a tale of two cities in some ways, because the wrestling at the beginning wasn't great. So you had like that weird tooth and nail match, which I didn't enjoy at all.
Very strange opening.
Bad opening, yeah. And to give them some bail here, Britt Baker was coming off of 2 like ACL injuries, I think it was, or knee injuries, one of those. So she just couldn't go the way that they probably needed to, and they protected her somewhat. But I didn't enjoy that. Battle Royals, AEW doesn't seem like they do a great job with Battle Royals. I didn't necessarily enjoy that one that much. The end was a little
small of a platform.
Yeah, in the end,
with what was going on, there's people getting thrown out of the ring, and they're not even really falling anywhere. They're falling right onto that little stepping podium.
Yeah, the crazy spot in that was the body bag with the tacks.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, that one probably threw you through a loop. That came out of nowhere, huh? He's done that before. More brutal.
I sent you a text.
Yeah.
I said, that man's going to get sued because he puts tacks into a body bag, zips the body bag up, and then tosses him into the stairs.
Power
bombs
him over the top rope.
Brother, he doesn't even make sure that he lands in a safe area.
No.
It's like, oh, nice corner step right there. Here's your neck.
Darby Allin's a crazy man. Like, that's the guy who took the spot. He's a nut, and he's done that move from, like, he did that onto that platform outside, right? He's done that from the ring to just the floor before.
Ouch.
I would never. It's like, that's a scary one. It's scary knowing that earlier in the night also somebody took a fucking head injury. Again, like
that's all
these things keep happening. Like, why are you doing that? Cut that spot. Just don't put it there.
Body bag powerbomb out of the ring, 100%. I get it. You put thumbtacks in there?
With tacks.
You're putting thumbtacks in there.
Yeah.
Sir, get yourself a lawyer.
The fall is worse than the thumbtacks to me. And I guess actually when everything went according to plan. The thumbtacks, thumbtacks don't hurt that bad.
When
man.
you're
Don't
falling, the thumbtacks are going inside of you.
No, I get that.
It's called impact.
Dude, your neck can break on the fall, Matt. The thumbtacks, they just need to pull them out of him. I've seen Mick Foley landed so many. Mick Foley fell from the top of a Hell in a Cell into a pile of thumbtacks.
He was a little.
The fall fucked him up more, Matt.
He was a little chunkier though. He had a little bit more.
The fall fucked him up way more.
I'm sure it did. But don't sign me up for thumbtacks.
Yeah,
do yourself a favor.
There was just some outlandish shit on this card. For a company that traditionally, the reason I thought you'd enjoy it more is they're traditionally a company that's more based in athleticism than they.
That's what you sold me on.
It's so crazy to me. Like, and this is the first event with them that I was like, this feels a little WWE-ish. Like, and it felt a little. They're on TNT, so TNT had WCW for a very long time.
Huge fan of WCW, baby.
You know,
huge fan.
WCW went off the rails like this shit sometimes too, man. Like,
what, you didn't like the 3-ring battle royale?
I actually really like World War III.
That was probably one of the best ones ever.
It's a fun idea. It's sloppy, but it was fun at the same time. I like being able to go from
what is Battle at the Beach? You're putting a wrestling ring on top of a pool? Sign me up, dude. I think you got it way mixed up. I think WCW was ahead of its time.
They've done Bachelor at the Beach with AEW already, too.
Good.
Yeah, because they're just stealing all the gimmicks. But this was the first one for me that felt too much like a WWE show.
It felt very gimmicky.
Yeah.
Right off the back, I'm texting. I'm like, tooth and nails?
Yeah, what's up with this?
You know I'm not a huge fan of dentistry, right? Like,
nobody is.
It just wasn't a good spot. And as the event wore on, there was more oddness. And I told you, I was like, dude, call me an originalist, if you will. Give me a fight that starts in the ring.
Well, that's where we get to the end, and I'm pretty sure that's what you enjoyed the most. And to me, it was the most well-wrestled match of the night. Is Dean Ambrose, a.k.a.
Don't you dead name him.
Yeah,
I had to learn his name.
Jon Moxley.
Mox.
He's great.
You don't dead name him.
He was really good last night. And MJF, who's possibly like the best heel up-and-coming wrestler in wrestling today.
Is he Rosie O'Donnell's kid?
He looks like he could be, yeah. He looks like he's had a silver spoon in his mouth his entire life.
I wanted to jump through the screen and punch him myself.
But it's perfect, man. His whole gimmick is so heel. Perfect. He's really, really good. He's got like that, when we were kids, like how you felt about Triple H, I feel like a little bit. How, like, he's in that early stage when he maybe was still Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
Like, you would hate to love him.
Yeah.
Like it's going to feel bad if you're
a fan. Like, or 2002 Triple H, where, like, I fucking hated him more than I ever could hate him. But a year later, you're like, well, you kind of need him. You know?
He ties a lot of good storylines together.
You kind of need that bad guy. He's a good one. This was his first step up into that level competition, too. He had a huge storyline with Cody about a year back that was really good. But this was his first main event title fight that he's had. And I thought he held up his side of the bargain.
Yeah, I thought it was a good match.
Bleeding like a motherfucker, too.
It kept me on the edge of my seat the entire time because I know I refuse to say that it's scripted. Right? I refuse to say that. Don't look at me and tell me that it's scripted. No one knows what's going to happen here. Okay? And by the middle of that fight, I'm like, dude, if Jon Moxley doesn't win this, I will never watch another
I'll fucking
AEW.
riot, dude.
I will fucking riot. And you didn't help me out at all because you're like, it's probably not going to happen.
I was pretty confident. I thought he should have lost last night, probably. I thought that was a good moment for MJF, a guy you've never seen before.
Yeah.
That felt like a good moment to put him over to me.
It felt like they would.
But it's really, like, that's the beauty of wrestling, and I think that's why I still watch it today, is because getting lost in that story. Being able to be a casual fan who knows nothing about what's going on, and being able, like, that's what really good wrestling is, right? Is when a guy, like, and I think it's no coincidence that Dean Ambrose has come from a world in the WWE where they do teach you a lot about storytelling, and I'm sure that developed a lot for him. And I'm not to say he didn't learn a lot of it on his own, and hasn't become better since he left there. But those years doing that type of wrestling helped him have a pace that felt more appropriate in that atmosphere than those flashy moves do, where some of them are missing, some don't feel as snug. Like everything they were doing last night was tight. Like it felt stiff and like. The blood, like, made, like, some of it was nasty and gross, don't get me wrong. But you mentioned the ending and, like, the storytelling in that ending, right? Like, so he normally gets this ring thrown to him, and he uses it to win the match. He does the heel tactic, like, put the ring on, punches the guy, and then gets rid of the ring. Yeah. You used to see, like, John Cena used to use a chain, like a chain gang chain back in the day.
William Regal used to have the
brass knucks
knuckles.
And the tights. Yes. Yeah, so, like, that's a huge shtick that's come in wrestling. So he does that, but he misses on the throw. And so MJF has to do that embarrassing, like,
that
thing.
moment.
And he's looking around on the ring, finds it, and he's so happy for a second, and then he just realizes, oh, it's perfect. The camera angling was perfect. Everything was fantastic. And then he hits the paradigm shift that you had been waiting for all night, which was banned. A move that he's not supposed to use. He ends up using. They teased me
the entire fight, man. Yeah. They were like, if he uses the paradigm shift, he's going down. He's going to lose his title. And I was like, man, I really want to see it. Like, he better do it. And it was the perfect ending.
It was a match done right for the type of environment that they're in. Matches like that, like, that's why a guy in the WWE like Randy Orton is really shining right now, is because being able to slow the pace down and work a tight match that looks real in this environment where you don't have fans to kind of cover up some of your stuff, it makes a big difference.
So, all in all, as a first-time viewer for AEW, it had a little bit of everything for me.
The ups, the downs.
The craziness.
Maybe more downs than ups at times.
I mean, it had it all.
It was emotional.
An emotional roller coaster
to say the least.
I am definitely willing to come back and purchase another ticket.
Gonna give it another shot, huh?
I feel like I have to. Yeah. I feel like they did just enough with those last 3 matches to really bring me back. And yeah, I think your boy might be tuning in for another AEW event for sure.
I mean, it's a wild ride. You never know. Somebody might almost die. Maybe they will die. Dude, I don't blame you. Give it another go.
I draw the line at head hitting the concrete. Strike 1, AEW. Mm-hmm. You get 2 more.
So, I mean, I guess the lesson to take here is always have a backup plan.
Have another event on standby, ready to go.
Because when shit gets uncomfortable, you got to get out quick.
And with all that craziness, Len, you can come back here next week. Catch us right here on For Those With Good Taste.
FDWTG.
We're going to get that right eventually.
I think I had it.
I think you nailed it. So check us out. As always, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow, and we'll check you guys out next week.
It's been real. Later.